Never spent a ton of money on something that seemed amazing, only to regret it later? That's what happens with these rally motorcycles. They look great, have all the right specs, but end up being a total nightmare. Get ready to see the 15 bikes that promise adventure, but often leave riders stuck, broke, or both. Only a fool would buy them, but people still do. Starting our countdown at number 15 is the Cagiva Elephant 900IE. Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't the Elephant die with the Dakar Rally? And you'd be right. Later versions did, but the early 900IE was plagued with problems that made it a nightmare. The Elephant borrowed its 904cc V-twin engine from Ducati, which sounded promising on paper. However, in the harsh conditions, this bike revealed its true colors. The engine would overheat constantly. The electrical system seemed designed specifically to fail at the worst possible moments, with fragile connectors that couldn't handle vibration and dust. Perhaps most frustrating was the bike's fuel delivery system, which would clog with alarming regularity when faced with anything less than premium quality fuel. Moving on to number 14, we have the BMW F650 GS Dakar. This single-cylinder attempt at a rally bike came with a respectable 50 horsepower and looked the part with its high front fender and extended suspension travel. However, beneath that rally-inspired exterior lurked some serious issues. The F650's engine, manufactured by Rotax, had a notorious appetite for consuming its own valve guides when pushed hard in dusty conditions. The suspension, while improved over the standard F650 GS, still bottomed out regularly on bigger hits, sending spine-jarring impacts to the rider. But perhaps the most damning aspect of the F650 GS Dakar was its electrical system's fragility. Water crossings frequently meant game over for the BMW's sensitive electronics. Nothing says rally nightmare quite like a bike that dies at the first sight of mud. The BMW F650 GS Dakar handles varied terrain with ease, but falls short on torque when riding on highways. Lucky number 13 brings us to the Aprilia Targ 600 Wind. The Targ 600 Wind came equipped with a single-cylinder 562cc engine that produced a modest 46 horsepower. While that doesn't sound terrible, the power delivery was so unpredictable that riding it through technical sections felt like trying to tame a wild horse. The engine would surge unexpectedly, breaking traction at the worst possible moments and sending riders into heart-stopping slides. Cooling problems haunted the Targ in hot conditions. The radiator's positioning made it vulnerable to damage from rocks and debris, while simultaneously being inefficient at its primary job of keeping the engine cool. The frame deserves special mention as well. Designed apparently with optimism rather than engineering principles, it would develop stress cracks around the headstock after sustained off-road use. And then there was the fuel tank. Despite the bike's rally pretensions, Aprilia somehow thought a range of less than 150 kilometers was acceptable for a machine meant to cross vast stretches of uninhabited terrain. Despite its shortcomings, the Targ 600 Wind maintains a certain charm that keeps it from falling lower on our list. Number 12 on our list of shame is the Honda XL500R. Now, Honda has produced some legendary off-road machines, but the XL500R proves that even the best manufacturers occasionally miss the mark. The single-cylinder 500cc engine was reliable enough, but it vibrated with such enthusiasm that riders often finished stages with numb hands and blurred vision. The suspension travel, adequate for trail riding, proved woefully insufficient. Riders would bottom out with alarming regularity, and the rear shock had a special talent for overheating and losing damping characteristics precisely when you needed them the most. Perhaps the most unforgivable sin was the XL500R's starting procedure. The Kickstarter was positioned on the left side, and starting the bike when hot was an exercise in futility and frustration. Despite Honda's reputation for reliability, the XL500R proved that even they could produce a rally bike that caused more headaches than highlights. Sliding into position 11 is the Suzuki DRZ400 in rally trim. Now on paper, this bike had many qualities that should have made it a rally contender. A reliable 398cc single-cylinder engine, manageable weight, and simple mechanics. In reality, it demonstrated how a manufacturer could take a decent trail bike and create a mediocre rally machine. The DRZ's engine, while bulletproof in standard trim, revealed its limitations when pushed to speeds. It lacked the power necessary. The gearing was all wrong for rally use, requiring extensive modifications to make it suitable for varying terrain types encountered in long-distance events. What really doomed the DRZ in rally trim was its fuel capacity and range. The stock tank offered laughably inadequate range, forcing rally builders to graft on aftermarket tanks that completely destroyed the bike's handling characteristics. These tanks would shift the center of gravity so dramatically that the bike's steering became vague and unpredictable at speed. The suspension tells another sad tale. The forks would dive dramatically under braking, making the front end nervous and twitchy during technical descents. The rear shock, meanwhile, had a knack for overheating after just an hour of hard riding, at which point it would effectively turn into a pogo stick. Perhaps most tellingly, when riders chose the DRZ400, their first order of business was usually replacing almost everything except the engine cases. When a bike requires that level of modification just to reach the starting line, its place on this list is well deserved. As we enter the top 10 worst rally motorcycles, we encounter the Kawasaki KLR 650 in rally configuration. The KLR's 651cc single-cylinder engine produced a modest 37 horsepower, which was barely adequate for highway speeds. When laden with the necessary equipment for rally navigation and additional fuel, the bike's performance went from leisurely to glacial. Riders would find themselves pinning the throttle wide open for hours on end, begging for just a few more kilometers per hour. Weight was the KLR rally's mortal enemy. The standard KLR already tipped the scales at a portly 337 pounds dry, and adding rally equipment pushed it well over 400 pounds. This weight became particularly problematic where the KLR would sink like a stone while lighter bikes floated across the surface. The suspension deserves special criticism. The soft, undersprung forks would dive dramatically under braking, creating heart-stopping moments when approaching obstacles at speed. The rear shock, while slightly better, would fade quickly under hard use, turning the back end into an unpredictable pogo stick in rough terrain. Perhaps most emblematic of the KLR's unsuitability for rally racing was its infamous doohickey problem, a poorly designed balancer chain tensioner that would fail catastrophically without warning. Nothing ends a rally faster than engine cases split open like a cracked egg, spilling vital fluids into the desert sand. The KLR 650 proved definitively that reliability alone doesn't make a good rally bike. Sometimes you need actual performance too. Number 9 on our countdown brings us something truly special, the Moto Gui Quota 1000. The Quota 1000 represents perhaps the most misguided attempt at creating a rally-capable machine in motorcycle history. First, let's start with the obvious. The Quota 1000 weighs around 520 pounds dry. For context, that's nearly 200 pounds heavier than competitive rally bikes. Adding rally equipment pushed it closer to 600 pounds. The Quota's 948cc V-twin engine, mounted in Gui's traditional transverse layout, produced a respectable 70 horsepower. Unfortunately, it delivered this power with all the refinement of an earthquake. The torque characteristics were so lumpy and unpredictable that maintaining traction in loose surfaces became a dark art few could master. Okay, now here's a question for you. Have you ever wondered what happens when you combine a shaft drive, a heavy flywheel, and a long travel suspension? You get a phenomenon called shaft jacking, where the rear end of the motorcycle rises and falls under acceleration and deceleration. On the Quota 1000, this effect was so pronounced that riders would find themselves inadvertently performing wheelies when powering out of corners. The Quota's unique longitudinal crankshaft created another rally nightmare, pronounced gyroscopic effects that fought against the rider's inputs. When leaning into turns at speed, the bike would resist directional changes with stubborn determination. In technical sections requiring quick direction changes, riding the Quota became less about skill and more about raw strength and willpower. Perhaps most bizarrely, despite its mammoth proportions, the Quota 1000 had ground clearance issues that would put it at risk during even moderate off-road excursions. The low-hanging exhaust and center stand would catch on obstacles with alarming frequency, occasionally launching riders over the handlebars in spectacular fashion. The Quota 1000 stands as testament to the fact that some motorcycles, no matter how interesting, should never be taken rallying. Taking the 8th position on our list of rally disasters is the first-generation Triumph Tiger 900. This bike demonstrates perfectly how British motorcycle manufacturers in the 1990s still had much to learn about creating capable off-road machines. The Tiger 900 was powered by a 3-cylinder 885cc engine that produced a healthy 79 horsepower. Sounds promising, until you realize this power was delivered through a transmission seemingly designed by someone who had never actually ridden off-road. The gearing was spaced awkwardly, with huge gaps between ratios that made maintaining momentum in technical terrain nearly impossible. Riders would find themselves constantly hunting for a gear that didn't exist by either spinning the rear wheel uselessly or lugging the engine to the point of stalling. The suspension tells another sad tale. While looking impressively substantial, the front forks would bottom harshly on bigger hits, sending shock waves through the frame that could literally crack the headstock area over time. The rear shock, meanwhile, would overheat quickly, losing damping characteristics and turning the back end into an unpredictable pogo stick on faster sections. What's particularly tragic about the Tiger 900's rally failures is that it could have been so much better. The later generations of Tigers learned from these mistakes, but that first attempt stands as a monument to optimism triumphing over proper development testing. At number 7 on our countdown of rally disappointments, we encounter the Yamaha TDM850 in rally configuration. The TDM850 was powered by a parallel twin 849cc engine producing around 75 horsepower. Now on paper, this seemed adequate for rally purposes. In practice, the engine revealed a strange split personality, lethargic and uninspiring below 5,000 RPM, then suddenly waking up with a surge of power that made controlled off-road riding an exercise in constant clutch modulation. This unpredictable power delivery proved disastrous in technical sections where precise throttle control is essential. The chassis geometry tells us everything we need to know about the TDM's rally inadequacies. With its 19-inch front wheel and street bias steering geometry, the TDM would plow through sand rather than float over it. In rocky sections, that smaller front wheel would catch on obstacles that proper rally bikes would roll over, sending riders on unexpected flight lessons. What truly doomed the TDM in rally use was its cooling system. The radiator placement made it vulnerable to damage from flying debris, while simultaneously being inefficient at its primary job of keeping the engine cool in slow technical sections. Yes, you read that correctly. At number 6, we have perhaps the most unlikely rally motorcycle ever created, a modified Harley-Davidson Sportster. The Sportster's air-cooled V-twin engine producing around 60 horsepower, was actually the least of its problems. The real issues began with the bike's fundamental architecture. With a low-slung chassis, minimal ground clearance, and a weight approaching 600 pounds with rally modifications, the Sportster Custom Rally defied every principle of good off-road motorcycle design. But would you believe that some of these bikes actually started rally events? It's true. What's even more remarkable is that a few actually finished, though never in competitive positions. Teams would reinforce frames, add skid plates that seemed to cover half the motorcycle, and install the most heavy-duty suspension components available. Yet, the laws of physics remained stubbornly unimpressed. The Sportster Custom Rally bikes faced unique challenges beyond their weight and ground clearance issues. The air-cooled engine would quickly overheat in slow technical sections where airflow was limited. The belt vinyl drive, while low maintenance on highways, proved catastrophically fragile when exposed to sand and rocks. Despite their competitive failings, these bizarre creations deserve recognition for their audacity alone. Sometimes, the worst rally motorcycles are the most memorable, not for what they accomplished, but for what they dared to at least attempt. Breaking into our top 5 worst rally motorcycles is the Royal Enfield Himalayan in rally configuration. The Himalayan's 411cc single-cylinder engine produces a modest 24.5 horsepower, which was woefully inadequate for competitive rally use. In racing conditions, this lack of power meant riders were constantly at full throttle, straining the engine beyond its comfort zone. The result? Frequent mechanical failures, ranging from broken valve springs to connecting rod issues that would send pieces of metal through the cases. But what really made early Himalayans notorious in rally circles wasn't just the lack of power, it was the shocking build quality issues. Frame cracks around the headstock and rear subframe became so common that they were considered almost inevitable rather than exceptional failures. Weld quality was inconsistent at best, leading to structural failures that could not just end a race, but potentially a rider's health. The electrical system deserves special mention for its remarkable ability to fail in creative ways. Water resistance was apparently an optional feature, with rain sometimes causing short circuits that would kill the ignition system entirely. What's particularly frustrating about the Himalayan's rally failures is that the concept had such promise. A simple, rugged, affordable rally bike could have democratized the sport. Instead, early adopters found themselves serving as unwitting beta testers for what was essentially an unfinished product. Later versions of the Himalayan addressed many of these issues, but those first few years earned it a firm place in our list. At number 4, we encounter the obscure but fascinating MZ Scorpion Rally. The Scorpion Rally was powered by a Yamaha-sourced single-cylinder 660cc engine that produced around 50 horsepower. However, this engine was installed in a chassis that seemed specifically designed to highlight its every single weakness. The frame, a unique backbone design made from cast aluminum, proved surprisingly fragile. Stress fractures would develop around mounting points, creating flexible zones in a structure that absolutely needed to remain rigid. Now, what really doomed the Scorpion in rally use was its bizarre weight distribution and handling characteristics. The heavy engine hung from the frame in a way that created a pendulum effect during jumps and rough sections. Riders reported that bikes seemed to have a mind of its own when airborne, rarely landing in the same direction it took off. This unpredictability made high-speed sections not just difficult, but actively dangerous. Did you know that the Scorpion Rally featured a fuel tank partially located under the seat? This unconventional design choice led to 2 significant problems. First, the tank's shape created dramatic weight shifts as fuel was consumed, changing the bike's handling characteristics throughout a stage. Second, and more alarming, crash damage to the rear section could compromise the tank, creating potential fire hazards in already dire situations. Perhaps the most telling aspect of the Scorpion Rally's inadequacy was its suspension. While featuring impressive-looking components, The suspension valving was so poorly matched to off-road use that riders faced a no-win situation. Set it soft and bottom out constantly, or set it firm and get shaken to pieces by small bumps. No amount of adjustment seemed to find a workable middle ground. Securing the bronze medal in our countdown of rally disasters is the Moto Mantra Rally Special. If you're struggling to picture a Moto Mantra in rally trim, your confusion is entirely justified. This bizarre creation represents perhaps the most misguided attempt to convert a street motorcycle for rally use in the history of the sport. The standard Moto Mantra was already an unconventional motorcycle, featuring radical styling by automotive designer Sasha Lakic and powered by a Ducati 904cc air-cooled V-twin engine. For reasons that defy rational explanation, a small number of these bikes were modified for rally use, with predictably catastrophic results. The Mantra's engine, while producing a healthy 80 horsepower, was fundamentally unsuited for rally conditions. Air-cooled engines already struggle in the slow, technical sections common in rally stages, but the Mantra's layout made this problem exponentially worse. The rear cylinder would routinely overheat, leading to seized pistons and spectacularly mechanical failures, often leaving trails of expensive Italian engine components scattered across the desert. The Mantra's fuel system presented another layer of rally nightmares. The complex arrangement of fuel pumps and lines was designed for a bike that would spend its life on smooth asphalt, not bouncing across rock-strewn desert tracks. Fuel starvation issues plagued these machines, with riders reporting that engines would suddenly cut out during high-speed sections, only to mysteriously resume functioning moments later. What truly secures the Mantra Rally special place in our top 3 is the suspension. Despite extensive modifications, the bike's fundamental geometry remained street-focused, with a steep steering head angle that created terrifying instability at speed over rough terrain. Riders describe the front end as nervous at best and actively suicidal at worst. Taking the silver medal in our Rally Hall of Shame is the first generation Ducati Multistrada 1000 DS. The Multistrada's 992cc L-twin engine produced an impressive 92 horsepower, but delivered it in perhaps the least useful way possible for off-roading. The power arrived in an all-or-nothing fashion that made traction control in loose surfaces nearly impossible without exceptional rider skill. In technical sections, riders found themselves constantly dancing on the clutch, trying to tame an engine that seemed determined to either stall or spin the rear wheel uncontrollably. What really earned the Multistrada its place near the top of our list was its remarkable fragility when subjected to tough conditions. The complex electronics would fail with distressing regularity, often stranding riders in remote locations. The fuel injection system seemed particularly susceptible to dust contamination, resulting in erratic running that could transform the riding experience from merely difficult to actively dangerous. The suspension tells a particularly tragic tale. The forks would bottom harshly on bigger hits, sending shock waves through the frame that could crack fairings and occasionally damage the delicate electronics. The rear shock would fade quickly under hard use, turning the back end into an unpredictable pogo stick in rough terrain. Later generations of the Multistrada improved dramatically in terms of off-road capability, but that first attempt stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of making marketing claims at face value in the motorcycling world. And finally, we arrive at our number 1 worst rally motorcycle of all time, the CCM GP450 Adventure. This British-built machine promised to revolutionize the rally scene with its innovative design and lightweight construction. Instead, it delivered a masterclass in how not to build a rally motorcycle. The GP450 Adventure was built around an aluminum-bonded frame. In theory, this was revolutionary. In practice, it proved to be catastrophic. The bonds between frame sections would weaken and fail under sustained vibration, sometimes resulting in complete structural collapse at speed. Nothing ends a rally faster than your motorcycle literally breaking in half beneath you. The engine, a 450cc single sourced from BMW, actually had decent potential. However, CCM's implementation, particularly the fueling system, created a motorcycle that ran like it was constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Riders reported unpredictable flat spots in the power delivery that made technical riding an exercise in frustration and high-speed sections genuinely dangerous. The braking system was perhaps the bike's most terrifying feature, with a front brake that could go from barely functional to grabbing violently with little warning. In descents, where controlled braking is crucial for both speed and safety, this unpredictability created heart-stopping moments that veteran rally riders still speak about in hushed tones. The electrical system deserves special mention for its remarkable talent for self-destruction. Water resistance seemed to be a foreign concept to whoever designed the wiring harness. Even morning dew could create short circuits that would strand riders before their day had properly begun. What truly secures the GP450's position at the top of our list was its production quality. Bolt threads stripped with minimal torque, welds failed under light loads, and parts that should have been standardized often required custom fitting just to make the bike functional. The few privateer teams brave enough to campaign these machines often found themselves reinventing large portions of the motorcycle just to reach the starting line. Although the CCM received much admiration, there were multiple reasons to not buy it. One major reason was cost. Even second-hand models were expensive and would take years of saving. Another concern was the limited availability of spare parts, especially over time. And multiple reports have pointed out serious issues with the bike's electrical system. Ironically, the engine seems to be trouble-free. While it's unclear how widespread these issues are, they raise concerns about the bike's reliability. The CCM GP450 Adventure stands out as a monument to ambition outpacing execution. Its revolutionary design promised to change rally motorcycling forever, and in a way it did, by showing future manufacturers exactly what not to do when designing a competition-worthy machine. So there you have it, the 15 rally motorcycles that promised adventure but delivered frustration. But hey, maybe you've ridden one of these and loved it, or maybe you've got your own horror story as well. Either way, we want to hear about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through motorcycling's Hall of Shame, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Until next time.